If Providence Hall appears to be an unorthodox school, to those who drive past the former Pat's Hall on Post Oak Road, then that impression is exactly what its founders intended. Within the 19th century farmhouse and near the ancient oak tree known and loved by Fredericksburg locals who used to dance around the tree, this small private school is designed to serve students with both non-traditional and traditional learning styles. The outcome? The school is achieving extraordinary results for its children and subsequently relieving the frustrations of caring parents. It is a remarkable achievement, and it all began with one family in a difficult situation, unwilling to accept the status quo.
So I have three kids in my home, and they all have very different learning styles. They're also very different kids, which I'm sure anyone could say that about their kids. But one in particular had difficulty in school, and we didn't know why. And after we exhausted all possibilities of what was available in town, we ended up with him at home with a private tutor. And then that was great for him and his education, and that person was able to give him exactly what he needed. The problem was he didn't have any friends. He didn't love to be at home going to school. So I started a program with a friend of mine out at a teacher's barn in the afternoon. And it was a STEM program, and it was meant to engage him and a few other kids in science and math because that was his interest. So there were 4 kids, junior high-ish aged, that were going out to the barn in the afternoon. It was just out on the edge of town. They were doing crazy stuff. They were taking water samples out of the creek. They did a controlled burn. They were driving a tractor. They were riding their bikes. They built a fort. All kinds of stuff was going on, and he could not wait to get there. So these 4 kids in September turned into 16 kids by December coming to the barn. So we had parents calling us saying, how do we get into the barn school? We're like, it's not a thing. This was just a program for our kids to give them what they needed. So by that spring, we were looking at, do we launch this into an actual program? Because clearly there's an interest for it. So we decided we had dipped our toe in the pool, and now we were just going to dive in. So we dove in, we started the school, and we launched the school. And we didn't know at that point if we would have anybody but our own kids. But we hired the teachers, and we believed that they would come. So we started that first year at the Presbyterian Church with 27 kids. And it was amazing, and it was a great year. But we realized early on, even though we had some fantastic teachers and professionals that knew kids and knew education, they didn't know everything they needed about kids with different learning styles and that needed certain things. And so that's where Lynn Nolan came in. So we hired Lynn Nolan. She came out of Dallas. She has 30 years of experience with students with different learning styles and different needs. She started programs. She's this amazing person that could take our dream and our idea and turn it into what we have now and what we're building every day here at Providence Hall.
What enticed me about Providence Hall was the newness of it, the freshness. It's a school that welcomes traditional learners as well as non-traditional learners. You don't find that school anywhere else. You find schools that are either for the learning different child or for, quote, the normal child. The kids, when we first accept them, we have to figure out what their learning style is. And sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's just a given. Oh gosh, they are a visual learner, or they are an auditory learner, or they're a kinesthetic learner, whatever type of learner they are. It's so apparent. But other times it's not. And we have to get inside their head and figure out, how is this child learning? How can we tap into their brain? And sometimes that is a real challenge, but it's really fun too. And then from there, we mold, okay, well, we have this type of learner and this type of learner and this type of learner, okay, how do we teach that? Well, we may teach language arts different this year than we do next year because we have different types of learners next year. So we're constantly creating an education, a curriculum that fits the particular class we have for that year.
And so it's a very student-driven school. The teachers have this big plan they work on all summer, and then they get here and they're like, plan's gone. kids have a new plan. This is what we're going to do because that's what they're interested in.
The curriculum here is a multisensory curriculum. It can be very messy. It can be very time-consuming. At times it can be very loud. But the fun thing about multisensory education is it engages every single child. It makes them become an active learner. They're actively involved. You don't see any wildflowers, if you will, in students. You don't see any passivity in your classroom. You see kids having fun with their hands raised, sometimes jumping out of their seats because they're excited about learning. They're having fun when they learn. Another neat thing about multisensory education is it helps the brain tap into the memory. So when you are engaged and when you're involved in an activity, whatever that may be, your brain is able to connect onto a concept. And then it goes into the memory, and it starts with the memory there. So if you need to reapply that concept and apply it to something else, maybe the next year or the next year or even the next week, it's got a place to go to. The brain has a place to go to connect to, what did I learn last week about that? Oh yeah, I remember when we were doing that in pudding or shaving cream or whatever we were doing. And it connects to that. And so you quickly go to the memory on that rather than, yeah, that sounds familiar, but I forgot what that means. The number one result that I look at is their self-esteem. They believe in themselves, they trust themselves, they go with their gut. And a lot of times when they walk in the door, they don't do that. They have no self-trust. They don't feel accepted. And when you feel accepted and when you feel like you believe in yourself, you're not afraid to take a chance. You're not afraid to make a mistake. You're not afraid to fail. And you look at life. You look at the people that'll learn from their failures. That's what we try to teach here. And it's so cliche to say, learn from your mistakes. But you truly do learn from your mistakes much better than you learn from your successes.
My son did not feel safe where he was. And when I say safe, I don't mean his safe from harm. It's more safe to be who he was and not afraid to be wrong and to ask questions and try things and fail. He didn't feel safe to do that. He felt very constricted, like I have to do it this way or I'm stupid. But he wasn't. He was a very bright kid. And so I think Providence Hall really, what we want is a safe environment where kids can come and feel free to be who they are and what they are, whatever that is, and they may not know. And that we see that in them, and our teachers look for it. And then they say, why not? Let's try that. Let's do it. That's your interest.
We really liked that the curriculum was based on the child. And so for math, for Miles, that's a subject that he may have a little difficulty on, and so they move at his pace, and then once it's accomplished, then he moves on to the next level.
They know that different kids' brains work different ways, and so they meet them those different ways.
He's friends with all of them, with all the kids.
He's got one that is a little older, and by having that friend, it's introduced him to things that I wouldn't think he would ever be interested in. And so for Miles, he never engaged in football or baseball, basketball, any of the sports. One of the kids here is been doing theater for a long time. Miles saw that, wanted to try it. He has found his sweet spot.
And the theater teacher last year was amazing here at the school, and so that really helped him. And so when he went to the theater in Fredericksburg, it was just kind of a flow for him.
So I saw an expansion and a help not only in my oldest son, who we knew needed help, but then I found that other kids were doing incredibly so much better as well. It's what the education that I wanted for my children. It's not read the book, do the worksheet. You're all outside. You're doing things verbally, visually, and it can make the difference in how they perceive education. That it's really something that they can love and grab hold of, rather than something they have to endure.
So I think the major challenges that the school faces are likely major challenges for any private school, and especially a new one, is resources. It's a small community. We don't have a lot of students, so we don't have a lot of parents, so we don't have a lot of resources. We're building that slowly but surely. We're having to import people and train people for these techniques that are different, and that's difficult. And as we go on, it gets better and better.
So we're changing kids' lives, and I've seen it, and so that's why we work hard every day, because it has to continue. I mean, you could move to Houston, you can move to Dallas, maybe you can move to somewhere in the Northeast that understands these children, but they can't stay in the hill country. They can't do it.
Well, what I see and I hope for the future of our school is that we can grow the school and its programs so that we can reach more students that really need our unique approach to education. And it's my goal to become a community resource so that we can provide educational diagnostic services and things like speech and occupational therapy and other services that are necessary for the success of these students. And really, that's whether they attend Providence Hall or not. You know, Providence Hall is a very unique place. We feel we're giving students the tools they need, along with all the support and encouragement they require to really push themselves to try new things, to question, to be wrong, and then to try again, and to push our students out of their comfort zone so that ultimately, they succeed in life. I mean, what would you try if you thought you couldn't fail?